Evening, chaps. How are we all doing? I'm back in Dublin city centre. I'm on the south side again, but I'm heading over north side of the river because I feel it's only fair to give our north side brethren a little bit of exposure. And I'll tell you what, I've just thought of something really funny. Do you see that bar over there? Yeah, I was in there during the pandemic. Yeah. It wasn't during lockdown, obviously, because during lockdown everything was closed, but they kind of opened up around July, I think, of 2020. But there was a stipulation. You had to buy a meal for €9. And to be honest with you, all I was interested in was having a couple of beers. And I started my day in my local pub, out where I used to live. And I had a few pints and a meal because you had to. And then I got a bus into the city centre, and the bus left me off over there, over that way somewhere, yeah. And by the time I got into the city, I was bursting to go to the bathroom. I mean, I was really, really in desperate need of the convenience, yeah. So I leapt off the bus and I literally broke the land speed record getting over that bridge. And I went into that bar there and I said to the barman, can I get a pint of whatever I was drinking at the time? And he said, oh, you have to have a meal. I said, well, I don't want one, I had one already. And he said, well, then I can't give you any beer. And I said, okay, I'll have whatever the roast of the day is, but I'm not going to eat it. Well, you have to pay for it, and I have to deliver it to your table. So I said, fine. So I said, okay, do it, but it's a waste of €9 or whatever it was, €12 probably at the time. I'm not eating it. And he said, well, that's not my problem. So I went to the bathroom, and then when I came out, my pint was on a little table. I had my pint, and then this meal arrived. And I said, oh, I don't want this, Jesus. And he said, well, look, mate, that's not my issue, you know, that's for you to decide. So he put it in front of me, and I started to pick at it just a little bit at a time, and about 10 minutes later it was all gone. So I had a few beers there, and of course, me being me, I wanted a couple more. So I went to a different bar. Oh, Maserati. Whoa. So yeah, me being me, I wanted a couple more beers, because once I start, you know, that's it. And I went to another bar, and the same rules applied. I had bloody 3 dinners that day. No wonder I'm flipping fat, says you, yeah. But there you go. Listen, we're heading over the north side of the city in a few minutes, yeah, because there's a couple of interesting things I want to kind of show you guys. So come on with me for the laugh. Okie dokie, chaps. I just had a nice little point in there, and now I'm going over the bridge here, the Halfpenny Bridge, yeah. So come on with me for the laugh. It's always full of people taking photographs here, because it is quite it's a landmark here in Dublin's fair city. And doesn't the view tell you exactly why? Yeah, that's heading towards the docks, the tall building. I think that's the tallest building in Dublin. It's our skyscraper, the one and only, yeah, Liberty Hall. Originally, I think the original build of Liberty Hall, it housed the Irish Transport and General Workers Union and the Irish Citizen Army, and we'll get back to them in a couple of minutes. Merchants Arch over there. Come on, let's keep going. And that, for you guys who don't know, that's the River Liffey, the murky waters of the Liffey. And ta-da. Alright buddy, see you soon, yeah? Oh my god, the smell of cannabis is rather overpowering. And now, as if by magic, we're on the north side. It's all rather vibrant. Lots of bars, lots of pubs, lots of restaurants. I've always wondered about that Warhammer malarkey. It's a little bit like a... Oh, go over and have a look. I'm not a major gamer. Oh, but I have been known. Oh, it's a little bit more like sort of model-y stuff, isn't it? Oh, wowzers. They're fiddly and you got to paint them up and... Whoa. I know they do games and that in here, like Warhammer tournaments. Wow, look at this. Anyway, onwards, let's keep moving. Look at this, look. James Joyce. And Tommy Shelby. That's brilliant, isn't it? Wow, yeah. Tommy bloody Shelby. Ah, chaps, listen. I'm sorry. I am weak. I stopped off for a beer. In a lovely, I won't say little bar, a bar called the Lots in Liffey Street. And I've never even seen the place before. And look, I'll give you a little bit of a look around. It's lovely. I'm quite, I won't say shocked, but I'm certainly surprised at how lovely it is. And they do food in here, and the smell of sort of sizzling steak and all that sort of stuff, it's, I won't say overpowering, but it's certainly bloody nice. So again, if you've never been to Dublin before, you've never been to Ireland before, or even if you live here and you've never been in Liffey Street before, or even in this bar, I'm bloody 50 years old, and I've never even noticed that this bar was here. And that just goes to show you the wonder of being an alcoholic. Sorry, I'm only kidding. The magnificence of having a drink and having a couple of beers in Dublin city centre. You'll always find somewhere new, and you'll always find someone to talk to. That is one of the great things about Dubliners and this wonderful city that's my city. I have to say, I'm terribly impressed with this bar. It's clean, it looks new, the decor is absolutely beautiful. It's Janie Mac. You know, the pint isn't terribly expensive. It's only €642. I'm only kidding. It's $7.50 or something like that, which for this part of the city is more than quite reasonable. Yeah. But I'm having a pint of Dublin's favourite Rockshore lager, and then I'm moving on because I got something quite important if you're into Ireland and Irishness and all that sort of stuff. I've got something quite important to show you. Yeah. I have to admit, chaps, it's one of the nicest pubs I've been in Dublin. Sorry, for years. That was absolutely lovely. Now, come on, let's go. I am heading down to, for me and for a lot of people, probably the biggest and greatest heritage site in not just in Dublin but in Ireland. So come on with me, let's do it, let's rock. One of Dublin's modes of transport, the Luas. Luas means in Irish, it means overground, yeah? But us Dubliners have sort of cocknified it, and we call it the Daniel, as in Day Lewis. Yeah. I think there are two main sort of, I don't know, tracks. I think one north side and maybe one south side. I'm not 100% sure because I don't live here. Yeah. Here's another one coming. And here's a member of the Garda Ciccolini. How are you doing? Rapid response unit, I'm guessing, yeah. But sorry, no, that's taking the Michael. And, you know, listen, they have a tough job. They have a very tough job. I wouldn't like to be a member of the emergency services under any circumstances. What I did for a living worked for me. So, you know, respect to them. And a really quick shout out to Kieran, my Pattaya mate, yeah. Wayne's Hotel. This is the only visit back to Dublin that I haven't met my mate Kieran at Wayne's Hotel. This is something that it's kind of traditional for us, and I'm a little bit disappointed in you, Kieran, mate. No, I'm only kidding, mate. We always meet in there at Wayne's, and we go and have the Carvery lunch and a couple of sometimes we have a drink, sometimes we don't. It depends on his work schedule, and it depends on whether I'm sort of driving or not, because you know what, chaps, don't drink and drive, yeah, it's that simple, yeah. Anyway, shout out to Kieran from Soy Diana, our favourite little bar, you know it. Alright chaps, we are now currently in OConnell Street in Dublin. This is the main thoroughfare of Dublin City. And it used to boast that it was the widest thoroughfare in Europe. No idea if that's true or if it's still the case. Cleary's department store over there, yeah. Billy Connolly told a story in one of his stand-up things about Cleary's department store. And apparently there was building work going on, and there was a big crane in front of it, yeah. And you couldn't see the sort of facade of the store, yeah. And then they took it down, and Billy, the biggin, who was probably the funniest man I've ever known. He is certainly he is the greatest comedian of all time. He, apparently, according to his wife Pamela Anderson, or Pamela fucking something. Pamela, what's her name? He looks at life sideways, which is absolutely brilliant, yeah. And Pamela, what is her name? Jeannie Mac, I can't remember, lads, I'm sorry. But that's beside the point. The point is that they took all the cranes down, and the facade was opened up after cleaning and whatnot, and it looks bloody good, and it's there a long time. And believe it or not, Cleary's clock used to be, back in the 80s and 90s when I was dating, back in the day, it was a case of, I'll meet you on Monday night under Cleary's clock. That is and you used to see lots and lots of single guys, single girls all dotted along there. It was a magical part of being a Dubliner back then, yeah. But back to the story, I'm as bad as Billy Connolly here. Apparently he was in a taxi or something, yeah. And the guy, he was driving up OConnell Street, I don't know which way, and the taxi man started singing, I can start again. The taxi man started singing, I can see Cleary's now, the crane has gone. Isn't that brilliant? Isn't that just so Billy Connolly? Shout out to him, he is the greatest, funniest man I've ever not met. Alright guys, if you're Irish, I don't want to use the word Republican because it has negative connotations, but if you're an Irish nationalist, this is the site of the birth of our nation. Monday, 24th of April, 1916, the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizen Army marched up this street, stopped just there, turned left or right, depending on which way they came. I think they came from O'Connell Bridge, yeah. Turned left and shouted charge, and they took over that building. That is the General Post Office, Dublin's General Post Office. And remember that back in 1916 our entire country was under British rule. Dublin was the United Kingdom's second city, and these rabble, they took over a dozen sites in the city and they held it for 5 days, and it was an absolute failure, as it was always going to be. Militarily, they were up against the greatest army that the world had ever known. They were up against the British Army, and they hadn't a hope. And The centre of Dublin city was destroyed in the 5 days that they held out here, yeah. But it lit the touch paper that lit the spark and the flame of independence. Militarily, it was an absolute total disaster, which it was always going to be. And one of the leaders, Padraig Pearse, had a sort of death wish, and he was executed for it. Dublin was a loyal to the Crown city at the time, and Dubliners, even myself, we are known as Jackeens. Anything with the term "een" on it means small, little jacks. And that was a reference to our love for the Union Jack at the time. Dublin was one of the most loyal cities, and the volunteers who occupied this building, and others, about a dozen around the city, were sent off. Most of them were sent off to prison in Wales, Frongach camp. The leaders were executed for treason, and that turned the tide. That awakened a groundswell of nationalism and national pride, and lit the flame for what became known as the Irish War of Independence. From 1918, when all the imprisoned volunteers were released and sent back over here to cause the greatest bloody mayhem, to use the words of the Michael Collins movie, against the British Army, that they hadn't experienced for quite a while, yeah. Not going into the politics of it, just a little bit of my interpretation of the history of it. I am not an historian. When I was doing when I was doing YouTube a couple of years ago, I got lambasted for a few historical errors. I am not a qualified historian. I just have an interest in this city and its history, and my country and its history. For God's sake, you know, don't we all in our own respective countries? But anyway, they destroyed the British, and the insurgents destroyed the centre of this city, and they escaped over there. I'm going to head over in a minute, but the reality is that the execution of the leaders of this little rebellion lit the flame for the War of Independence and led to our independence from the UK. Yeah, again, not getting political, I'm only talking what happened. This is a for fun channel, not about history or anything of the sort. It's not about politics or anything of the sort. It's not my thing. I have my views. I don't want to share them here. I just don't feel it's right to get into arguments and the likes with different people. It's not my remit here. But let me just expand a little bit, just a smidge, for a couple of minutes. But this is the site of the birth of our nation. And I'll tell you something else, just one more thing. In the centerpiece of OConnell Street, I think they had an opportunity to build a statue to the people that gave us our freedom, and look what they did instead. A giant sewing needle. Mother of God, do you know what? My heart bleeds. They could have at least put a statue of Conor McGregor here, but they did this instead. Anyway, listen, I'm gonna just go left here a little bit up Henry Street, just to expand a little bit on the story about it. Was Easter Monday 1916, the 24th of April, known as Éirí Amach na Cháisce. The 1916 Rising, yeah. And as I said, it lasted for 5 days. And what a wonderful 5 days, I suppose it was, if you're an Irish nationalist. If you're not, you know, I'm only telling the story. I'm not here to politicise or anything. Jesus, I bet they're freezing, because I'm flipping freezing, and I'm dressed. So let's move on just a little bit for a couple of minutes, and I'll give you a little bit more of the story. Yeah, it's quite tragic as well. Yeah, heroic in many ways, because these guys knew from before they fired a shot, they knew they were all going to die. And you know what? That takes courage, even if it's misplaced. It still takes courage, does it not? Okie dokie, chaps. 1 minute later. This is Henry Street, yeah. And on Friday the 28th, I think, of April, this building was entirely on fire, as was the rest of the city centre. And the insurgents came out the side door, all right? Out this door. And they came up this way into Henry Place, being fired upon as they went, yeah? And one by one, they went down this way and turned left. So let's do it. And they made their way up to this blocked up doorway. And they broke in and they broke through a couple of buildings here until they came to number 16 Moore Street, yeah? And they made their way to this building here, number 16. And there's a little plaque up there, yeah? And it was here that the decision to surrender was made, yeah? And they surrendered. But not before something, how are you? Quite remarkable happened, yeah? Not a lot of Irish people around here, are there? And remarkable is an understatement. Let me just elaborate a little bit, yeah? Up the top there was a barricade, and there was a British machine gun nest up the top, up across that barricade, yeah? And a guy called Michael O'Rahilly, known as the O'Rahilly, decided to make one last stand, and he led a bayonet charge towards a machine gun nest. How futile is that, yeah? And of course he was cut down, and he was the only leader of the insurrection to be killed in action. And he died over there. And while he was dying, he wrote a letter to his wife. I think her name was Fanny. And it's known as O'Rahilly Parade, this little building. And there's a transcript of the letter that he wrote while he was dying. Oh my goodness, while he was dying. There's a transcript of that letter written up there, and that's the spot where he passed away, sorry. Right there. Right there. I mean, that is the courage and the idiocy and the futility and the bravery all in one of that single action. Half a dozen guys, or I don't know, was it 8 guys, was it 20 guys, but they led a bayonet charge against a machine gun nest just up the top there. That military action was doomed from day one, always was never going to be successful. Ireland's freedom was never going to happen as a result of that action. But the groundswell of support that happened after the execution of its leaders was phenomenal. And there you have it. And then over the next 3 or 4 years, there was a excuse me, there was a war of independence that ultimately led to a great deal of success. The 6 counties of Northern Ireland opted to remain in the United Kingdom, and that is their choice. and I look that they are fellow islanders of mine. I love them and wish them well. A lot of people talk about a united Ireland. I have my beliefs, ain't going to share them here, but this is Moore Street, by the way, and this used to be the most Dublin street in Dublin. Street traders selling fruit, and I haven't heard anyone speaking English since I arrived here 10-15 minutes ago. Yeah, right on the corner here used to be a pub, Madigans on Moore Street, and I worked in it on a Saturday afternoon, and it was one of the busiest places I ever worked in my life. So let's move on. Alright chaps, I'll tell you what, this is probably my last port of call of the evening. That is Dave. I worked with Dave 40 years ago, and mother of God, he's still here. This is Madigans in North Earl Street, right? And this bar, this pub, was bombed and destroyed during the 1916 insurrection, and it was reopened in 1919. So it's 105 years ago, and the sign up there on the wall, or on that mahogany masterpiece, sorry, excuse me, has been there, I think, since then. Yeah, there was a little bit underneath it before that said 1919. Yeah, and it was reopened after Dublin was rebuilt. After the insurrection here, yeah, and it's a typically old Irish Dublin bar, all right. And this, you know, if you're not Irish and you're coming to Ireland, or you ever have plans to come to Ireland, come here. It's just magnificent. It's just a real oldie worldy pub, a drinker's pub. I'd even go so far as to say a heavy drinker's pub, if not even further. All right, so it's magnificent. They do great food in here, and this is part of my history. This is part of my life. I was here for, oh God, about 2 years. I worked here. So, you know, come here if you're coming to Dublin, or if you live in Dublin and you've never been here, come in. It's a real oldie worldy Irish bar. End of story. Yeah. So listen, it's been a long day, and it's been an even longer night. I'm going to finish up now because I am going home, going back to my sister's house. Good luck, good night, may your God go with you. Don't forget your shovel, and God Almighty, humanity rests upon this. Have a good time all the time, chaps. Good luck, good night, and see you soon. See you. Next video will probably be me going back to going home. Tempest Future, guys. Time flipping flies.